All right, the webinar should be broadcasting to everyone right now, and I am going to wait for the attendees to come in. Hello to all of you. Uh, Austin, Catherine, Lynn, Marilyn, good to see all of you. I am um, I'm Bryce Gorman. I'm the fundraising educator, and I'll be stalling for just a second. I'm joined by Jeanette Rooney today, who is part of the LHS team, and I know it takes a second for audio to come up. So, hey Jeanette, there you are. If you're able to unmute, can you would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanette Rooney. I'm the Assistant Director for Local History Services, and I'll be kind of keeping an eye on the chat today and in the Q&A.
Right. Thank you, Jeanette. Yeah, today we'll be going over the Heritage Support Grant Program. I am going to turn off my video because honestly, I'm a terrible pantomimer. So I will turn off my video. Just a couple things beforehand. This webinar is being recorded. If you are uncomfortable with your name being shared during a Q&A or anything like that, you can always list that you don't want your name to be shared, or you can send a question to us at any point. As Jeanette said, she'll be monitoring the chat and everything. If necessary, she can put up links. And so feel free to send us questions as they come up. And if Jeanette thinks that I need to address it at that slide, then I totally trust her. So let me hide my, well, I don't know if I can hide my video. That's fine. There it is. So the Heritage Support Grant Program was started back in 2015, 2016. And it is today we are in kind of a new iteration of it. So this presentation is going to provide an overview of the program. We're going to do a little tour of the online grant program. I do want to say that all of the functions of my role, I'm as the fundraising educator, I offer free fundraising consultations, site visits when it's not COVID, and webinars and workshops. All of that has been paid for by Lilly Endowment, who made the Heritage Support Grant program possible. So I do want to say thank you to Lilly Endowment for all of their help in making this possible. So what we're going to do today, we are going to, so this is an overview of the webinar here. First, we're going to provide an overview of the full grant program. We're going to look at the different types of grants, the process, and the priorities for HSG. We're also going to take a tour of the online grant portal. I've got it up on my Google Chrome, and I'll show you what it looks like if this is your first time with the process, and I'll show you all the what the applicants will have to do to submit their grant proposal. So we're going to cover the different sections of the grant application. If you do want an in-depth look at each question, that will not be today, because that would end up being a 2 or 3 hour webinar. And instead I broke it up so that on Monday afternoon, I will be having a project grant webinar like this. It'll be an hour and a half, and I'm going to go in depth for every question. And that's a place where you can ask more in-depth questions. Or if you are viewing today and you decide you want to come back for the project grant webinar, then you can bring your questions there too. So we will be we'll be handling that portion too. So, but for now, this webinar is going to serve as an overview. We're also going to discuss the required attachments for all applications, along with the project grant requirements, including the cash match and board support component. We will go more in depth on Monday for the project grant webinar. And finally, we're going to look at the reporting requirement for all of the grantees. So a little bit of background, as I'd mentioned, all of this is made possible by a generous grant to IHS from Lilly Endowment. It started with a $2.5 million grant that was to be re-granted to local heritage organizations. So one key component of the Heritage Support Grant Program is education. We want organizations to learn more about fundraising, which is why I have this role. We also want them to become confident and comfortable with philanthropy. So this is all made possible through a variety of outreach efforts like this webinar, but also the fundraising workshops, the local history coaches, which we'll talk about in just a second, and the opportunities for our local history partners to serve on grant review panels. So we will go into these shortly. Uh, there are two different types of heritage support grants available through our program. Both have the same eligibility requirements, funding priorities, and the required documents. We also require applicants watch a 13-minute ethics webinar. I will talk a bit about that shortly. But it's to ensure that all applicants are following best practices. So the first grant that I'll mention, the mini grant, uh, has a range of $500 to $4,999. And the maximum project timeline, the time where you can spend the grant funds and implement this project, is 11 months. So this project, this grant does not have any matching component. And it is a one-part process, which I'll go into that more with the grant or the project grants. Awards are usually made about 6 to 8 weeks after the application deadline. It's often good for organizations who are getting started with the Heritage Support Grant Program to look at the mini grant program and look at ways that can kind of get you started in grant writing and proposal writing. It is a much more approachable grant for a lot of organizations. So if this is your first time, there's no reason you can't apply for a project grant, but I'd also suggest looking into the mini grants as well. You can talk to your grant coach about all of this. So the project grants, these range from $5,000 to $50,000. Project grants do require a 15% cash match, as well as 100% board support in the organization. It doesn't have to be the project, although that would be great, but we do require 100 board support in the organization. And board support for our intents can include financial support, so cash donations, so forth, or volunteer hours. There is a multi-part process for the project grants. The first step is the summary proposal, and the summary proposal is it's kind of an executive summary or a brief overview of the project. And what this allows us to do is it allows the review panel to look at your project and make sure that it meets our eligibility requirements, make sure that this is something that would be that fits the Heritage Support Grant Program. And it is much, much quicker than the rest of the full grant proposal. And the summaries of proposal are due March 2nd. That will be a Tuesday. And if you have not gotten started, I would suggest taking a look at it, taking a look at the documents on our resource page shortly. But you are not, completely out of time. There's still time to get this in. And So after the review panels have looked at the summary proposal and they feel that the project meets the grant objectives, eligibility, funding priorities, then organizations will be invited to submit a full proposal. So full proposals will be due just about 6 weeks to 8 weeks after the summary proposal deadline. There are two steps, and I'll talk about each one shortly. The default spending period for a project grant is 12 months. So you have 1 year to finish your project. You can finish your project sooner if you choose, but the project timeline can't be any longer than 12 months. The turnaround time for this grant is roughly it's a couple months between the summary proposal and when the checks go out. We have multiple reviewers looking at this, so it does take time, but we will keep you apprised of every step. So the eligibility requirements for the Heritage Support Grant. To be eligible, an organization must be incorporated in the state of Indiana as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. If uh, this is a federal designation, so we will require your exemption letter from the IRS. You also have to reflect history as a significant component of your mission or propose a project that is history focused. If history is part of your mission, your organization most likely aligns with the purpose of the grant, which is to improve care of and access to history. What determines a history-focused project? For HSG, we consider projects that interpret, present, or disseminate a historical narrative. They're projects that tell a history story or provide useful historical information. We also require that an organization have an annual operating budget less than 300,000. You'll notice that there is the little asterisk here at the bottom. Whether an organization operates under a larger parent organization, I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But something I would like to mention is we get a lot of questions about whether we fund buildings and landscapes. So we realize that these projects are usually very expensive and finding funding for them can be very difficult. So the answer to that question is yes, if. As I'd mentioned, that what determines a history-focused project is how it interprets, presents, or disseminates a historical narrative. Well, so we'll consider building and landscape projects if that building or landscape is primarily used to facilitate historical interpretation, or if it houses a significant historical collection. For cases like this, we've determined that the building and sometimes the landscape to be part of the organization's collection. In terms of housing a historical collection, we consider that your building is the envelope to your collection. So if you have a building that has a roof issue, if you need soffit repair, if you need if you need a new roof, we want to make sure that your collection is secure and stable. So protecting the building is would be in our priorities. So on the flip side of that, I would like to say that we are not able to consider preservation for preservation's sake. HSG supports the preservation of historic structures, but in order to be eligible for the grant program, the structure must serve as the envelope for your collection, or the structure must be critical to historical interpretation. Not that the building is historic itself, but that it is critical for interpretation. So I know that there's usually a lot of questions that come up around that. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can put a question in the chat box. I will have my email at the end, and I'm going to follow up with everyone afterwards with the recording, the PDF of the slides, and a couple other documents that I think will be helpful. And so you'll have my email, and you can ask me any other questions that might come up. Say you have one that comes up next week, then you are free to, reach out to me. So yes.
There is one question.
Yes.
When will the next date for submitting a summary proposal be? After this round, when's the next round, basically?
Yeah, so most likely the next round would be March of 2022. I don't want to give a firm date just because sometimes things happen. I mean, last year we had the start of a pandemic. So it should be March 2022. However, I would like to stress that we have mini grants coming up twice this year. So we have them in June and September. And so if you are not able to meet the project grant deadline, I would stress that looking into the mini grant program, if you have a phase of your project that can be done in the $500 to $5,000 range. So if you do have any further questions, please let me or Jeanette know. So I'm going to go back really quick. You might have noticed the asterisks here about the friends groups. I do want to stress what that means, because sometimes the definition of a friends group can get a little nebulous. So I really love the definition that the Texas Historical Commission had for their friends group webinar, and I've got the link here if you want to look at it yourself. But they mentioned that a friends group is an organized group of volunteers, usually with a 501c3 tax exempt status, which exists to provide assistance to another organization through fundraising, volunteer, and or advocacy support. So very common libraries have friends of the X County Library, or you'll see other organizations. Sometimes you'll see Friends of Marion County History or something of that nature. So it doesn't always have to be a group that is called Friends of, but the idea is that it's a group that exists to do fundraising and advocacy and volunteering for another organization. So if you have questions about whether you count as a friends group, please reach out to me. So a friends group is able to apply for HSG funding. If you are applying for HSG funding, you will be required to supply a letter from the parent organization. So the Friends of, I'm just going to pull a county randomly, Friends of Du Bois County Library. They would have to get a letter from the Du Bois County Library stating that that the library supports the project and application. Grant funding will be held by the Friends group, and that a representative of the Friends group is going to be on the project team. So a Friends group that applies will have to meet all the other eligibility requirements, but they can apply. So I know that often brings up a lot of questions too. Again, please reach out to me if you do need a little clarification. Our funding priorities are what you might call intentionally broad. So we realize that organizations have a lot of different priorities and needs, and we want these grants to be as impactful as possible. So for this reason, we've identified 4 very broad areas for our funding priorities. So any HSG project should fit into one of these. First is collection stewardship. It is by and far our most popular funding priority. So a project in this category is going to address the storage, management, and care for collections and associated documentation entrusted to the organization's care. This might include historic objects, structures, or landscapes, uh, and we have a lot of organizations that ask for funding for, say, um, collections care materials, so unbuffered paper or boxes from Gaylord. We also have a lot of organizations asking for, say, building repairs to seal up that envelope, or uh, replacing windows in a historic house. So all of these fit under collection stewardship. Um, Diversity, equity, and access and inclusion is includes projects that focus on efforts to ensure that diverse individuals fully participate in all aspects of the organizational work, broaden organizations beyond public accommodations, and work to achieve genuine inclusion. So, uh, with the DEAI funding priority, some of the things that I want to really stress are that this last phrase here, work to achieve genuine inclusion. What that means for your organization and your community, which is the direct impact of this, it will vary from organization to organization. So an organization that works with a community with say a large Latino population, it might be beneficial for them to have bilingual signage and work to make sure that they are working with members of the Latino community to bring in more of their community and have a greater impact. So that would count. On the other side, you might have a community that has a very large elderly population. So in a situation like that, making sure your building is more accessible, so ADA compliant, or that you have made sure that a lot of the uh, exhibit materials have documentation or signage that is larger or more easy to read for someone who might be low sighted, that might be a DEAI project. So it really varies by community to community. Sustainability is one of our priorities that includes projects that focus on identifying and accessing internal and external resources. Uh, the organization needs to achieve goals and improve sustainability. So these projects meet the needs of the present without compromising its ability to meet future needs. Successful completion of a sustainable project sets the organization up for greater capacity to take important next steps. So sustainability as it is a very large topic, and what it can mean for organizations. Often sustainability is the ability to make sure that you are continuing your programming. So a sustainable organization or a sustainable project might include programming that reaches your K through 12 schools in a digital format, because right now we are all switching to digital formats like this. Um, and in an instance like that, it is more sustainable for you to have digital programming available for your organization, because that is going to make sure that you can reach your K through 12 schools. Finally, we have planning. Planning projects identify organizational objectives and assess organizational capacity. So several organizations have received HSG funding for collections assessments, museum assessments, historical structures reports, or other materials that help them properly plan for future projects. We have lots of documentation about all of these assessments and reports. If you are not sure where to begin with a large project, let's say you have a building that needs a lot of different work, or you're just getting started in a larger building project, a historic structures report, a museum assessment might be a great place to start. And again, each of these, reach out to your coach to determine what is the best path for you. I do want to provide a little more information about personnel. I understand many organizations need more people. We all do. For this reason, organizations can request funding for temporary project-specific personnel or consultants. We do not fund permanent staff, or we do not allow for a percentage of permanent staff salary to be covered by the grant. Your grant coach can help you work out the details of a proposal that does include personnel. So if you are unsure of the employment differences between a full employee and contract labor, the IRS has a very good write-up on what the difference is for the designations. But I do stress that if you are unsure, I would seek the advice of an employment attorney to make sure that you are compliant. Um, so going with the exclusions, we do have a few. Yeah, Jeanette.
I'm sorry, there's a
Yeah,
question in the chat.
of
Where
course.
do exhibits fit into the funding priorities?
Absolutely. So exhibits, a lot of things that, well, a lot of projects end up being multiple priorities. So it really depends what you want to do with the exhibit. If you want to make sure that you are doing let's say digitization is a very common one. So digitization can be considered for one, it could be considered a sustainable project. Because if you are digitizing, say, county records and putting it on your website or making it available, you are making sure that those documents are safe, which would be collection stewardship. You are making sure that your organization is able to uh, provide those documents in perpetuity online. So that would meet sustainability. And it would also meet accessibility because you're making your documents more accessible. So it can meet all of those different requirements. If you are doing a project that is, say, a brand new exhibit that features your county's history, then in a case like that, that might be more of a sustainability project. So that having an exhibit that sets you up for future success, that allows you to provide historical context for your county, that will bring in more volunteers, that will bring in more funding, that will bring in more attendees, that would be considered sustainability. So again, you are able to choose which priority fits your proposal when you log into the grant portal. So if you choose multiple ones, that is perfectly fine. And if you have any further questions, please let me know. I don't want to just look at your own example and say, here's exactly what yours is, right in front of the rest of the audience. So we can also talk offline if necessary. So there are some funding exclusions. A lot of these funding exclusions fall under general operating expenses, such as rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, salaries, wages, benefits for permanent staff that I mentioned previously, or retiring organizational debt. I would also like to remind everyone that HSG does not fund building purchase or items for resale. So that would be things like your gift shop. Um, every organization that registers in the grant portal is assigned a grant coach. Your grant coach is a local history services staff member who's going to serve as your contact and mentor throughout the entire grant process. It's not just the application, it's the entire time. They're there to help you um, and answer questions, provide feedback, and review drafts. Jeanette is a coach, and all of the local history services staff are coaches with the exception of me. And you can ask all of them tough questions. You can share any concerns without fear. They're not on review panels. I'm not on review panels. So any questions that you ask will not affect your ability, your reviewer score. Once they provide support throughout the entire application, they will step out for the review. So after the review is complete and funding decisions are made, then the coaches can step back in and offer assistance throughout the entire project implementation if the project's funded, or they can assist with feedback and edits if you wish to reapply after an unsuccessful submission. So they will be there for you. I do want to encourage everyone to spend some time on our website. It is indianahistory.org/grants. You can look through this. You can also find it through our main website, and then under our services, you will have the Heritage Support Grants will be one of the options. So there's a resource page where you can find information that will take you, that'll make your entire your grant writing life much easier. We have grant application samples, the HSG budget templates, glossaries for fundraising terms and collections care terms that they were all developed as part of our Hoosier Heritage Alliance project. We also offer free training, such as this webinar, because as I think I mentioned at the very beginning, it's a fundamental part of the educational component of HSG. We offer workshops across the state throughout the year. Well, we would when the pandemic is over, we will. So we're going to be offering a lot more digital content right now. And one of the most important stops on the HSG website is the grant program guidelines. So please take some time to read through and understand the guidelines, use them to reference the information that we're going to cover. And it's also got some great links for training information. It's got all of our staff contacts and some additional resources. So after you look through them, if you have any other questions, please contact me or your coach.
Bryce, there's a good question in here.
Yes, please.
Are these grants allowed to be matching funds for another grant?
So that is going to be a tricky one, because one of the components of HSG is that all project funds need to be spent within that 12-month period. So if you start spending funds on the project beforehand, then it would be ineligible. So there are, however, some occasions where we've had organizations apply for grant funding, and they have already mentioned that we have grant funding that is tentative from another organization. So yes, that would fit, as long as the project itself fits within our parameters and our spending period, it should be fine. We do want to, so one thing I do want to stress though is it does have to meet all of our funding parameters, guidelines, so forth. But also, since you will have to convince the review panels of why your project deserves funding, I think it would be important to say how the grant funds are being used specifically within that. So yes, if it's matching funds, that is very good and important. But I would also try and stress how those specific funds are going to be used. Again, I think this is something where if you do need more information, please get in touch with me, and we can walk through your specific project. So
Bryce,
yes.
If you want, I can clarify also a little bit, as
please.
Speaking as a coach. I know I've coached several organizations that have been working on sort of bigger, like multi-$100,000 projects, and how does our grant fit within that? One of the things that I always recommend is that if you can figure out one part of that bigger project to fund with a Heritage Support Grant, and then that sort of becomes your Heritage Support Grant project. So thinking of an example, if there's a very large historic museum renovation to the building happening, maybe that whole big project is taking several $100,000, but the roof, say, is $40,000. Well, then the roof part of it becomes the Heritage Support Grant project. So I would think about how you can sort of encapsulate the project within that bigger grant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeanette. That is great. We do like organizations to phase projects. I don't like to give out names of organizations just because it feels intrusive, but we have had a couple organizations who have phased large building projects into multiple project grants and mini grants by breaking it up into sometimes a couple components of a roof project or a stabilization project. So thank you, Jeanette. With applying for the Heritage Support Grant Program, everything is done online. We do not offer paper or emailed applications. We like to streamline this process as much as possible. It's all handled through our online grant portal that is run by a platform called Flux, F-L-U-X-X. So you may occasionally hear us refer to Flux. Excuse me. It is important to use Google Chrome for the project. So Google Chrome is this browser icon here. Flux is optimized for Google Chrome. So that's not to say that it will not work on any others, but to avoid as many issues as possible, it is best to use Google Chrome. Google Chrome is 100% free to download from the Google Store. So it is google.com/Chrome. So that is a free thing to get. So you can access the grant portal from the Heritage Support Grant website, and you will choose how to apply, which is this page here. So you can see the Heritage Support Grants and the how to apply. And then it will take you to this page. Then you click the apply for a grant. So I'm actually going to try and change my share to my Google Chrome. And you can see this is the website, but there we are. So this is our main site for the Heritage Support Grant Program. You have all these sections: how to apply, the guidelines, the review process, all of our training and resources. It's all broken up, and I would like to give a lot of credit to Jeanette for all of her frankly amazing work at taking all of our ideas and making it look much more put together and organized. So this is where you would start the application. You click here and it will take you to our Flux website. And it's going to look like this, but I'm actually going to change the share because there are just one or two more steps before that. And I really hope I'm getting to, there we go. Okay, so you will be taken to a registration page that starts with an eligibility quiz. The eligibility quiz is it is 3 questions. It'll be down here at the registration. There is the take the eligibility quiz that is circled in red. It's used to help organizations determine whether they fit our grant eligibility requirements. So here are the 3 questions on the left. You'll notice it is the same that we had talked about before with our eligibility. If you cannot answer yes to all three questions, it will direct you to email myself or Tamara Hammerline for additional assistance. We want to make sure that anyone who is truly eligible can register for the system, but we also want to make sure that you're not spinning your wheels and applying for a grant that you would not otherwise be eligible for. Once the eligibility is done, that'll take you to the registration page. This is a one-time process. You'll note here in the red text that this process is not automated. So each registration is verified by a member of the grant team. They're going to look at they're going to verify your nonprofit status. So this does sometimes take one day to approve the registration. But as I said, it's a one-time process. So if you register, say today, and you get your registration information, your login credentials, you never have to register again. So one thing, this is not the same as submitting a grant application. We have had that come up once or twice, so I do want to stress that right now. You will receive a username and password via email. I'll send that to you. And I'll also notify who your coach is. So when you talk about what your funding priorities are, or I'm sorry, what your organizational priorities are, then usually you'll get matched up with a coach that fits those needs. So I'll send you your username, password, and I'll let you know who your coach is. So all of that, once your registration is complete, and you get your username, your password, also check your spam mail. Every now and then it does go to spam, so just be careful. You will go back to that registration or that page where you started the, I'm gonna just move back to how to apply here and apply for a grant. That'll take you the login page, which you'll notice, I'm sorry for flipping back and forth. It's the same as when you took the eligibility quiz, but now you will have a username and password. You can return to this page again and again to log in. I would stress to everybody, once you get your login credentials, test it, make sure it works, change your password. I'll give you a temporary one. And be very careful who you share your login information with. It's not that we anticipate anyone doing anything nefarious, but what has happened in the past is sometimes people will share their login information and two different entities will start a grant proposal, and then it creates a ton of confusion. So just be aware who you're sharing the information with. It's also good if there's any issues that come up, let's deal with them early. This is what the grant portal is going to look like. And you can see that with the boxes here, you can update your profile or you can begin an application. So here in the blue box, you can update your profile. Let's say your phone number or your email has changed. You can update it there. Here in the red box, you can start a project grant or a mini grant. And if you do receive funding, you will have to submit a report. That is also done here. So I'm going to just show you what that'll look like on the page. So this is a test account that I did. You can start, you can do any of your information for, I know it's not entirely creative, but you can do any updates to your profile. You can submit, you just hit the flux button to go back to your start page. Of course, my internet will be slow for this, so I apologize for that. And you can start a project or mini grant here. I do love that it's just spinning for me. And I do want to say to everybody, these grant proposals, mini and project both, you do have to fill out all of the required forms before you can save it. It's something we're working on with the Flux team. But if you're not ready to fill out the information in full, it's best to put like a um, just a couple characters like test or update or whatever you choose. But so I do stress to everyone to save your applications often, uh, but you will have to go through that process. So it's also helpful to put the all of your saved information. So everything you put in the text fields and all that, save it in a separate Word document. We found that that has helped a lot. We don't anticipate there being problems, but let's say there's, well, let's say there's an internet outage or a power outage or something. It would be best if you had a backup just in case. So that's going to take you, let's start with the project grants here. Um, if you start I'm going to go back again, my apologies. If you start a project grant here in the red box, this will take you to the summary proposal. Um, as a reminder, the summary proposal is going to provide a review committee with an overview of your project need, your solution, and your anticipated results. So the projects that meet the eligibility requirements and the funding priorities will then be invited to submit a full proposal. So the first section of the summary proposal includes a lot of it's the project details, includes a lot of important details about your project, the project overview, and the project team. So you'll give the title of the project, the total amount of the request, and you'll have the project start and end dates. So as I had mentioned early on, each round of grants has a set start date, but the default end date will be 12 months for a project grant and 11 for a mini grant. You can move that date up if you don't anticipate the project will take the entire allotted time, but you cannot start any sooner than the default start date. So the project narrative, the next section, that's going to be kind of the heart of the summary of proposal. It's going to provide a preview of the project, and it's going to serve as, well, an executive summary. So you want to provide enough information to demonstrate that you have a logical plan to address a critical need. And you have the resources necessary to put that plan into action with HSG funding. This is not the place where you have to go into every single detail. This is, as I had mentioned, this is an executive summary. And so if you're invited for a full proposal, you'll have a lot of opportunities to provide more information. So we want details, but it doesn't have to be exhaustive details. So I hope that I hope that helps a little there. We do ask questions about your organization's fundraising. So the review committees will look at this information to determine if your organization has experienced managing grants in the past, but primarily this is used for data collection. It helps us understand the extent which organizations are doing fundraising on their own. I have stressed a couple times that fundraising and education are crucial to this grant program. So this helps us see how organizations are doing fundraising throughout the whole process. So do not worry about these questions negatively impacting you. We just ask that you answer it to the best of your ability. There are a few additional questions about co-sponsors. Not every project will be part of a partnership. Many will, or at the very least, they could be. If you have identified partners or co-sponsors, please make sure to account for their role in your description of the project. We'll also ask about building ownership. So organizations don't need to own a building or even have a building for that matter in order to apply for a grant. But if they don't own their building, and especially if the project proposes changes to that building, then the review committee is going to want to see evidence that the building owner has approved of the project, and they support the proposed changes to the project. They'll also want to see any pertinent details to uh, the agreement you have with the building owner. So if the building's owned by the city and you have a 100-year lease with them, that, it's important for the review committee to see that. Finally, the summary proposal will ask about fund management. So the reviewers will be looking for confirmation that the organization has a process in place that allows them to track specific funds and ensure that the grant funds are only used for the project and in the manner that's proposed. So this is actually a very quick process. We don't want anyone to just do it at the last second, but we intend this to be a very quick process. Moving on to the full proposal. Yeah, so once you've submitted your summary of proposal, then organizations that fit our eligibility requirements will be invited to submit the full proposal. The full proposal, it's going to be the same application that you had for the summary proposal, but it's just going to open up new questions. You'll see it at the bottom. So the sections of the full proposal will be the institutional readiness, evidence of need, project logic, implementation, evaluation, sustainability, and there are additional documents. And I'm going to go into those here. Institutional readiness is where an organization can provide evidence of their capacity to successfully carry out the project and show reviewers that it's the right time and the right place for the project. In the evidence of needs section, you'll want to provide fact-based evidence to persuade reviewers that the need can be met through the solutions that you propose. Project logic section is an opportunity to go into greater detail about the planned work and intended results you introduced in the project summary section and in the summary proposal. Implementation, this is where you'll illustrate exactly how the project will be accomplished. In addition to a timeline, the reviewers are going to want to see that you've identified critical milestones in the project and that you've built specific indicators that will help you gauge whether you are progressing with the project as anticipated. So the evaluation section, this is where you're going to track and measure the changes that you see that come as a result of your project activities. So it's helpful to remember that evaluation is not a test you can fail. It's a tool to use. And in the sustainability section, pardon me, reviewers want to see how your project will impact the long-term goals of your organization. Does the successful completion of this project set your organization up with greater capacity to take important next steps? Is it important to the continued momentum of a larger goal to the organization? So is it important to the continued momentum of a larger goal that you are pursuing? I do want to reiterate that on Monday, I'll have a project grant webinar. This webinar was not the place to go into every single question. Otherwise, we would be here for hours, and we can break it up instead. So if you want to go into each question individually, we will do that on Monday in the project grant webinar. And also, if you are unavailable for that webinar, if you sign up, I will send the recording and the slides to everyone. So we can go into more detail on Monday. All organizations who apply for any grant, mini grants, project grants, will have to watch a 13-minute ethics webinar. We decided to include this webinar because historical collections are held in the public trust. They have to adhere to a field-wide standard of ethics that encompasses accountability, governance, and other practices. So it's important that we ensure the funds that are distributed through HSG, since they were entrusted to us by Lilly Endowment, are being used responsibly by organizations who adhere to the standard of ethics. And we have the ethics webinar on our resources page, so you can watch it now. Well, not now, after this webinar. But Tamara did a wonderful job with the ethics webinar, and I think it's great for everyone to watch it. But if you apply for HSG funding, you are required to watch it. There are several additional documents that are required to be attached to the grant proposal. And you can attach them at the documents section. You'll see the additional documents in the list on the grant proposal, and you can add them right there at that green plus button that's circled in red. So there's a mix of required and optional documents for HSG. We require your organization's annual budget. We require the grant project budget on the HSG budget template, which is something that we have the Excel file on our resources page, or you can access it on the additional documents. There is a link to it, so you don't have to go hunting for it. We require a board list and a copy of your IRS federal tax determination letter. Again, this is not your state sales tax exemption letter, which has been provided before. This is the letter that your organization received from the IRS to confirm your 501c3 status. So your organizational budget, that can be whatever form your board has approved for your organization's use. You do not have to use a specific template or a report for this, but if your organization currently does not have an annual budget, this is something that you will want to discuss with your coach. They can help you through this process, and it has happened before. So do not stress, but it will be, this is required, but we will help. If you're applying as a friends group, if you'll recall earlier, if it's like the Friends of the Madison County Library or Friends of this historic house, you will be required to supply a letter from that parent organization confirming that they support the project, a member of the Friends group is on the team, and that all of the grant funding will be dispersed by that Friends group. There are several optional documents, and I say optional documents, but they are highly recommended because they will I want to say more often than not, but honestly, it helps so many organizations strengthen their case that I'm actually having trouble thinking of times where it has hurt someone's case. But the optional documents, you can include up to 2 letters of support. So if you want to include a letter of support, that is often, let's say you are doing an exhibit project and you want to focus on, say, the African-American community of your county, then having a letter of support from an organization that is pivotal to the African-American community in your county, showing that they support the project and this is why they love this project, that will be much more impactful than a letter of support from, say, one of your board members. So if you are considering letters of support, think about who will have the greatest impact on the project. You can also include supporting documents. So building projects often include contractor quotes, before and after photos. If you have a collection storage needs and you need to rehouse some of your collections, showing what the current environment looks like. So be judicious with your supporting documents. They often help, and the only time where they can hinder is if you offer so many documents that it fatigues the reviewers. They will read everything, but they might get tired. So the project budget does have to use the HSG template. Again, you can get it on our website or in the grant portal. It is a simple Excel file that has a couple formulas built into it. This is also going to be used for the final grant report. So you'll notice there are 3 different sections: the income, the expenses, and the balance. So the formulas built in will automatically calculate a 15% cash match in the income line, which we will talk about in just a second. But this is so this provides a line item account of all the expenses and income, and it should be detailed enough to provide information for the grant reviewers. In the income section, you're going to include all the cash coming in for the project. The first line should be the Heritage Support Grant funding. If you're requesting $10,000, then up here, the first line in the income would be description, HSG funds budgeted 10,000. You won't put in the actual yet because you don't actually have the money yet. And then in the following lines, the next line is going to be automatically calculated for the cash match. So it is a logical place to put your cash match. And then in the notes section, you can list, here's how we intend to do the cash match. If you're not sure yet, that's okay. I can offer assistance with the fundraising education there. But if you already have something in plan, like you're going to use your annual fund letter this year to get the cash match, then you can note that in the notes section. You'll also list any other income that is necessary for the project. So any funds you already have in hand. If you are part of a larger, if this will be a match to another grant, then you could list that in the income. The expenses section, this is where you're going to list all the anticipated expenses. So keep in mind, this is all budgeted. Pay attention to the balance section at the bottom. So your total income should equal your total expenses. So your expenses should be detailed enough that we can see what you're using the funds for, but you don't have to list every single nut and bolt. So again, be judicious in your expenses. You don't have to list individual Gaylord boxes one by one. So especially if you have a building project, we all understand that building projects are weather dependent. Building projects can uncover other issues. This isn't just building projects, but it primarily happens with building projects. There are times where contingency funds are really helpful. In fact, the review panels often ask if they have taken contingencies into consideration. So adding a 5 to 10% contingency or just in case funds is perfectly reasonable. Many organizations will use their cash match as the contingency funds. So if you're proposing a building project or something that is weather dependent, I would keep that in mind. With that, the cash match is something that is often has a lot of questions in it. So all project grants are required to raise a 15% cash match. This match must come from new fundraising, and it has to be actual funds. This cannot come from an in-kind donation such as use of space. This cannot come from general funds, rainy day funds. And so the 15% cash match is calculated in addition to your total grant request. So let's say you're requesting the $10,000 that I'd mentioned before, then your 15% cash match would be $1,500. So the project total would be the cash match and the HSG funding, so that'd be $11,500. You have an extended timeline to secure the cash match. You can start fundraising up to 4 months before the summary proposal deadline, and you have until the end of the grant cycle. So it's about 16 months to raise the funds. We do ask that you document the sources of your match in your final report. And I do want to state that as the fundraising educator, I can offer consultations if you are having issues, especially right now with COVID. So um, I don't want this to be a hindrance. We are here to help. Board support is something that I had mentioned in the early on. During the first evaluation of the Heritage Support Grant Program, it was found that organizations with higher board participation led to long-term growth and success. So we determined that the requirement of 100% board support would meet the need of higher board participation while also offering board members flexibility, whether they want to invest their time or their money. So if you have a board that has a lot of financial resources but not a lot of time, then asking them to financially support your program would be a better option. But if you have, pardon me, if you have a working board that does a lot of volunteering, then their volunteer time will also count. So organizations that receive project grants are required to have 100% board support, and that support can be financial contributions, volunteer, or a combination of the two. I just want to stress you have a lot of options here. With all of that, the summary of proposal, or with the mini grant, the full proposal, let's get to the best part, the hitting that submit button. It's also the most stressful part for a lot of organizations. So when you're finished with the application, you've uploaded all the required documents, it's time to submit. Before you hit that button, please review all the attached documents. Make sure that you go through the list that's on there, make sure you've got them all, make sure everything is readable. It's very, very rare, but occasionally a document will get corrupted in transit. So just make sure that you can read it too. And we also suggest sharing a draft with a colleague. You can share it with your grant coach. You can share it with a board member or another colleague, or just someone who's aware of your program. So you can have a set of second eyes. And they might spot an issue that you wouldn't. You can also print your final copy just for reference. Once you hit the submit button, that's it. You cannot edit it any further. So please be aware of the submission due date. We do not accept late applications. So once a grant or a proposal has been submitted, it goes into the review process. We have all of the review forms on our website. We're not hiding anything. You can look at everything and make sure that your grant proposal is fitting the review process here. So our reviewers it's external committees that are made up of history, museum, nonprofit professionals, representatives from local history partners. It's not me, and it's not our coaches. It's not it's not our VP. These are colleagues. So the criteria we provide to review panels, it's in line with the applications. Projects need to fit with our funding priorities, present a compelling need for support. The review panels are going to look for evidence of institutional readiness, that there's a clearly that it's the right time and place for the project. They want to see a well-designed project with a thorough plan for implementation. So they're going to look at the budget, make sure that it's reasonable and complete, and they want to see that the intended results are clear. So they want to see what your intended outcomes are, how you'll track and measure them, and how it's going to contribute to your organization's stability. What we will do is all organizations that submit a grant proposal, you will receive feedback, whether you receive funding or not, but you will receive feedback from the grant panels um, that will tell you, here are some of the things that we thought were really good, and here are the things that you might want to work on. Whether you receive funding or not, this is a great time to go back to your coach and say, here, let's walk through these things. So this is a learning process too. Let's be very positive here and say all of you listening today receive grant funding, because I really believe that by listening in today that this is going to help. You will be required to submit at least one report, and if it's a project grant, 2 reports. Um, Project grants will have to submit a mid-grant report. This is sent to all project grantees around December, and it's available through an email link through a Microsoft Forms page. This is a fairly informal 9-question report. It's here. It's here to make sure that we can see how the project is progressing, see if any issues have come up, and offer assistance if necessary. With the coronavirus, that has affected a lot of projects, and so we wanted to offer any assistance uh, if it was necessary. All projects, sorry, all grants, project grants and mini grants will have to submit a final report. So for project grants, it'll be 2 months after the end of the grant timeline. And for mini grants, it'll be 1 month after. All of this is done online, and the final report is done on the grant portal. You can actually submit your final report anytime during the grant period. Once you've spent the funds, once you've met all the grant criteria, so the cash match, the board giving, once that is complete, you can submit the final report. But the deadline will be 2 months after the project grant. So until the final report is received and approved, organizations cannot apply for future HSG funding of that same grant type. So let's say you receive a mini grant and there's the next mini grant coming up in September. You cannot apply for that until you've submitted your current final report. I hope that's helpful. So final reports will look for information about the progress and impact, lessons learned, future plans, education, and fundraising. We require a final budget. So the grant budget that you submitted for the application, you're going to use that same one, but you'll fill in the actual columns. So you'll say, here's the amount of money we actually raised for the cash match, and here's how the expenses actually turned out. And if there's a problem with one of the expenses, or let's say you got a really great deal on something, then you can document it there. You will have to spend all grant funds, and we can, if you have any questions, we can work through it with you. Yeah, Jeanette.
Sorry, Bryce. There was a question. If you've received a previous grant, how does that affect your ability to receive another?
So in the grant portal or in the grant application, you can address some of the you can address a lot of your experience, and I can share my screen for this one. I'm going to pull up the project grant here. So you've got the mission, you've got the details, team, narrative, institutional readiness here. This is a place to list where you have received past training, where you've received, where you have experience with a project. But this is also a place to talk about past grants that you've received from us. And that just gives a little bit of context to your ability to actually, receive grants, implement projects. So that is the positive side. One thing I do want to stress, though, We don't have a scoring system that if you've received grants, you get extra bonus points or anything like that. Each grant proposal is independently reviewed by a panel. One thing I would like to stress is your grant panel might be different from year to year. So treat each application as if it's a first time, because that panel might be brand new to you. It might be someone who reviewed your past proposal, but more likely it'll be someone who's brand new. And unless you tell them about your past grant successes, they will not be aware of it, because they're going by what they have in front of them on the proposal. So I hope that is helpful there. And Jeanette, if you have anything that you'd like to add in, please feel free. So the final report, it does require the final budget, but it's also helpful to include before and after photos, any testimonials, press coverage. A lot of this helps us because we like to show impact to our funder, Lilly, but we also like to have this to promote you. We want to show the progress that you've made. We want y'all to succeed, and that's why we've implemented a lot of the stuff like the coaches. So in addition to your coach, who will be assigned to you once you register, you can contact any member of the grant team. Here's my information, Bryce Gorman, my email. You can also contact Tamara. Tamara is the Director of Local History Services. She does a lot of the general inquiries as well. And Tamara is wonderful to work with. Actually, all of Local History Services is wonderful to work with. But reach out to us if you have questions. And you can, if there are any questions right now, I am happy to address them. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for this. And I'm going to restart my video. Eventually. There it is. And so I am happy to spend the next 15 minutes or so, longer if necessary, but we can spend the next 15 minutes with any questions you might have. And Jeanette, if there are any questions, I see, okay.
I think we answered all the ones that were currently in the Q&A.
Yeah. So Jeanette, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot for just a second, is there anything that you'd like to add as a coach?
I would say take advantage of your coaches for sure. We are more than happy to read drafts, and not even just one draft. We can read multiples and provide some feedback. I would say another tip that I would have that I always give to the organizations that I'm coaching is be sure to proofread. And then if you can, find someone sort of outside of your organization and not with someone maybe that's not as familiar with the project that you're doing, to give it a read through, to proof it, because a lot of times someone who's not familiar with it at all might be able to almost see it from the grant reviewer's perspective, where they might be able to see holes in your narrative that you might be able to fix. So I always recommend that you have someone to see if you can find, a cousin or something that is good at proofreading to take a look at it and see if everything makes sense.
Right. No, that's a great point. We've had some proposals that started with a lot of jargon, and they started with a lot of very complex stuff. And when it was looked over by a friend and by a coach, they started to see that, oh, no, this is something that makes sense to me as the person who wrote it, but it doesn't make sense to the people reading it, or it takes them a lot longer. And often it makes the proposal better. Yeah, so there was one other, one thing that we did put on the website that I believe I'd mentioned earlier, but just in case, we have all of the past grantees from last year. We have their kind of the summary of their project. It's on our website. So you can take a look at what past funding has gone to and see if there's something that aligns with what you did or want to do, sorry. So if there's something that aligns with what you would like to do, you can reach out to us and ask us, what happened there? What did they provide that made them successful? And we want to help you. We try very hard not to be mean grantors. I don't think we are. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to share them right now. And you can email me if you want to share it in private or if you want to have a longer conversation. So I'm going to give it just a second there. And I do want to remind everyone that I will send the recording. It does take a few minutes to compile, and I say a few minutes, it'll probably be by the time lunch is over, that it will finally compile. I will send the recording, a PDF of the slides, and a few other documents that will hopefully be helpful in an email. And I will, assuming that everything is finished today, I will try and send it out this afternoon. So you will have everything you need. Okay. All right. Well, I am going to end the recording now. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to Jeanette for fielding questions and for everything that you added. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the grant portal, and I can't wait to see what you want to do. So y'all have a wonderful day and a great weekend.
Thank you all.